On all fours, mutt. These words, spoken with lazy cruelty, echoed off the high concrete walls of Gymnasium number 7 in Ekaterinburg. 150 students held their breath, watching the unfolding scene. A nervous chuckle broke the tense silence, but quickly died as Rostislav Orlov's head snapped toward the sound. Vasilisa Petrova's gaze remained fixed on the dusty parquet floor. Her hands trembled. But if someone had looked closer, truly looked, they would have noticed something strange. The trembling followed a specific rhythm. 7, 8, 9. "Did you hear me, ugly?" Rostislav's voice dropped, becoming more dangerous. "I said, get on your knees and bark like the dog you are." The circle of students tightened. Raised phones resembled aimed weapons. At the center of this circle stood 18-year-old Vasilisa Petrova. Her fragile frame seemed tiny next to the imposing Rostislav Orlov. He was 1 meter 95 centimeters tall and weighed 110 kilograms of pure muscle and inherent malice, the son of an influential city council deputy. Fluorescent lamps cast harsh shadows on his face as he leaned so close she could smell expensive energy drink. The crowd reveled in the spectacle. They always enjoyed it when Rostislav found a new victim. And this invisible girl, who sat in the back of every class, ate lunch alone, and glided through the corridors like a ghost, was perfect prey. But what they didn't know was that Vasilisa Petrova wasn't counting breaths to calm down. She was counting down to 0. 3 weeks ago, she'd made a mistake. She was exhausted. 5:30 a.m. training, underground fights at midnight, studies. All of it was draining her last ounce of strength, and when Zakhar, one of Rostislav's henchmen, accidentally bumped into her in the corridor, she reacted instinctively. It was a barely noticeable movement, a slight shift of weight that caused Zakhar's subsequent shove to miss entirely. He flew past her from inertia, looking around bewildered. No one noticed anything except Rostislav. Rostislav Orlov ruled the gymnasium like a king, with everyone else as his serfs. The football team captain, 6 years of wrestling training, and a father who taught him that strength was the only currency that mattered. He built his reputation by crushing those who dared to fight back, and now he had a new project. "I'll count to 3, Rostislav announced, playing to the crowd. 1. Vasilisa's fingers twitched almost imperceptibly. In another life, her real life, those same fingers had knocked out Anton the Hammer Rebrov. Those same hands, seemingly so small and weak, had secured 47 consecutive victories in places where defeat meant a trip to the intensive care unit, not just shame. 2. She thought of her 17-year-old brother Dima, fighting a very different battle in a hospital bed. Leukemia didn't care about underground championships or school hierarchies. It only cared about money. 10 million rubles for experimental treatment the insurance company deemed medically unnecessary. Vasilisa called it their only chance. 3. The crowd held its breath, waiting. This was the moment the invisible girl was supposed to break, just like everyone before her. To cry, to beg, to do whatever Rostislav commanded, because that's how the world worked. The strong devoured the weak. And Vasilisa dropped to her knees. The gym erupted in shouts and laughter. Phones flashed. Rostislav loomed over her like a gladiator, arms raised, basking in the adoration of his entourage. "That's right," he said, loud enough for all cameras to record. "Know your place. Now bark for daddy." Vasilisa's lips moved. No sound emerged, but her mouth clearly formed numbers. 4, 5, 6. The laughter grew louder. They thought she was trying to speak, but couldn't from fear. They thought terror had stolen her voice. 7, 8, 9. Rostislav began to lose patience. The script required complete humiliation, and silent obedience wasn't enough. He needed her to bark. He needed her to break. He needed the video to go viral before lunch with a title like "Football Star Turns Nerd into His Pet Dog." And then he did what he always did when someone didn't follow his script fast enough. He drew back his leg to kick. But the change happened the instant his leg began to move. In one moment, she was a trembling, invisible girl on her knees. The next, she was something entirely different. Her breathing, once panicked, became controlled. Her shoulders relaxed, and in her eyes, when she finally raised them, there was absolutely nothing. No fear, no anger. Only the cold calculation of someone who had spent years studying the precise force needed to shatter a ribcage. "Wait," someone whispered in the crowd. "Look at her face." But Rostislav had already put all his strength into the kick. His leg flew toward her side with enough force to knock the wind out of anyone foolish enough to stay put. Vasilisa didn't stay put. She moved like water, finding the path of least resistance. The kick meant for her ribs met only emptiness. Rostislav, expecting resistance, lost his balance, his own momentum pulling him forward until Vasilisa, rolling back in one fluid motion, rose to her feet in a stance that seemed more animal than human. The laughter in the gym died. Someone dropped a phone, the sound of it hitting the floor deafening. "Lucky shot!" Rostislav snarled, trying to save face. But something in his voice had changed. A tiny crack had appeared in his confidence. He'd been in enough fights to distinguish movements dictated by panic from those that were the result of training. This was not panic. "Stand up straight," he commanded. "Stop playing games." Vasilisa straightened slowly, deliberately, without a single wasted movement. This economy of motion would have been instantly recognized in certain underground circles, but in the gymnasium it seemed alien. "I already apologized for your friend," she said quietly, but her voice carried throughout the gym. "I asked you to leave me alone. I told you that you needed to learn respect." Rostislav stepped forward, trying to use his size to intimidate. "Now get back on your knees, or what?" Vasilisa tilted her head slightly. "You'll hurt me? Humiliate me? Make my life hell?" A pause. "You're already doing that." The crowd smelled blood. This was something new. No one spoke to Rostislav Orlov like that. "Guys," he yelled, not taking his eyes off Vasilisa. "Looks like we'll have to teach her a harder lesson." 3 football players pushed through the crowd: Zakhar, who started it all, Denis, Rostislav's loyal enforcer, and Timur, who enjoyed inflicting pain almost as much as Rostislav himself. 4 against 1. Almost 300 kilograms of athletes against a girl who weighed perhaps 55 kilograms, even soaking wet. "Still want to act brave?" Rostislav asked. Vasilisa's phone vibrated in her pocket. She didn't need to look. That ringtone meant one thing: Vikenty Kniazev, the fight organizer. It meant an evening bout, another chance to earn money that could save her brother's life. But she couldn't leave. Not with these 4 blocking every exit, not with the crowd filming everything, and not with Rostislav's reputation, which forced him to go all the way until someone was seriously hurt. "I don't want to fight," she said sincerely. Fighting here meant exposing herself. Exposing herself meant questions. Questions meant the end of everything she had built in the shadows. "What a pity." Rostislav nodded to his guys. "Because now you'll learn what happens to those who don't respect me." Zakhar came first, attempting a simple grab. His hand never touched Vasilisa. She subtly shifted her weight, and just like that, Zakhar's own momentum carried him past her. To the untrained eye, it looked as if he simply missed. Denis and Timur approached from 2 sides, trying to trap her between them. Vasilisa waited until the last moment, then dropped sharply. Denis and Timur slammed into each other with such force that the crowd gasped. She rolled back again, rising at the very edge of the circle. Rostislav's face turned crimson. He lunged forward himself, delivering a sweeping blow that had knocked out 3 guys the previous year. Time slowed for Vasilisa. She saw the punch as if it moved through thick syrup. She saw the obvious shoulder wind up, saw the poor stance that left him completely open. She saw a dozen ways to counterattack that would send him unconscious before he even hit the floor. But she also saw the phones, the witnesses, the inevitable questions that would follow if she showed what she was truly capable of. And she made a decision that would haunt her for the next 10 minutes. She allowed the punch to graze her shoulder. The force of the blow spun her and brought her to one knee. The crowd held its breath, then erupted in cheers. This was what they had been waiting for. The natural order of things had been restored. Rostislav stood over her, breathing heavily but triumphant. "See," he announced to his audience. "That was just luck, but luck runs out." Vasilisa touched her shoulder, assessing the impact. She realized that even Rostislav had limits. He wanted her humiliation, not a lawsuit. "Last chance," he hissed, just for her to hear. "Get on all 4s and bark, or I won't hold back the next punch." Her phone vibrated again. Vikenty Kniazev didn't like to wait. Every minute lost here was a minute taken from preparation for the evening fight, a fight that could change everything. But looking into Rostislav's cruel, smug eyes and at the bloodthirsty crowd, Vasilisa realized something important. She was tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be weak, tired of letting people like Rostislav Orlov think they owned the world. "No," she simply said. That single word hit the gymnasium like a clap of thunder. No one said no to Rostislav Orlov. "What did you say?" Vasilisa slowly rose, pretending to favor her shoulder. "I said no. I'm done with your games, and I won't be your entertainment, and I will no longer pretend that your power rules here." "You think you have a choice?" Rostislav laughed, but the laugh sounded strained. "You think you can just walk away?" "Yes." Vasilisa stood to her full height, and something in her posture made the nearest students instinctively recoil. Here's what's going to happen. I will walk out of this gym, you will let me pass, and tomorrow we will all pretend this never happened. Or, she paused, or I stop holding back. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Rostislav looked at her, truly looked. For the first time, he saw her standing, her weight slightly on the balls of her feet. He saw the relaxed readiness in her hands. He saw eyes that had witnessed violence far beyond schoolyard fights. "Are you bluffing, Petrova?" She smiled, but it wasn't a happy or scared smile, but the same smile 40 of her opponents had seen right before waking up in a hospital bed. There's only one way to find out. Rostislav felt the energy of the crowd shift. They came for a spectacle and they were getting it, but not the one he expected. His reputation wouldn't survive this. The very fact that this girl dared to challenge him was already undermining the foundation of fear he had built for years. "Fine," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Want to play, fighter? We'll play." He lunged at her, using a move that had won him 3 district wrestling championships. Low center of gravity, arms spread to block escape routes. A perfect takedown that ended any of his real fights. Vasilisa saw him coming with the detached analysis of someone who had faced men twice her size, in places where the referee's job was simply to ensure no one died. She had 2 options: let him take her down and hope someone intervened before things went too far, or reveal who she truly was, right here in front of everyone, and face the consequences. Her brother's face appeared before her eyes, pale, thin, but still smiling, still believing his older sister would find a way to save him. Knyazev's fights brought in good money, and today's tournament grand prize could save their lives. If she was exposed here, all of that would disappear. But if she let Rostislav Orlov flatten her against the gym floor, something else would disappear, the last shred of her soul that still remembered how to stand tall. The decision came to her. Rostislav was already half a meter away when Vasilisa moved. To the crowd, it must have looked like a magic trick. In one moment, she was standing still. In the next, she was already spinning away from him, like a bullfighter avoiding a bull. Her hand barely touched his shoulder as he flew past. A simple touch, but at the perfect angle to amplify his own momentum and send him directly into the crowd of students. People scattered. Rostislav crashed to the floor. When he lifted his head instead of anger, there was something close to astonishment on his face. "Wrestling is good," Vasilisa casually remarked, as if they were discussing sports over lunch. "But it has huge holes when you're fighting someone trained in multiple disciplines." And then he understood. She saw the moment when comprehension flashed in his eyes, that she wasn't just a lucky nerd. This was something else, dangerous. "Who are you?" he asked, getting to his feet more cautiously now. "Hey, it's the ghost!" A voice came from somewhere in the crowd. A younger guy, maybe a 9th grader, held up a phone displaying a video from some private Telegram channel. "Look, same height, same build, same movement style. It's the ghost from the underground fights." Everything froze. Ghost! The name swept through the crowd like wildfire. Everyone had heard the rumors. The undefeated fighter in the illegal arena. 47 victories, most by knockout. No one knew her real name because she always fought in a hood and mask, but the videos were legendary, brutal, effective, terrifying. More and more phones appeared, more videos were uploaded. Side-by-side comparisons of Vasilisa's movements in the gym and shaky footage from abandoned warehouses where people paid cash to witness violence without rules. Rostislav turned pale as a sheet. "You're the ghost." Vasilisa didn't deny it. There was no need anymore. The evidence was on more than 50 screens. The same recognizable style of movement, the same economical motions, the same way of turning violence into a semblance of dance. "Damn," Dennis muttered, stepping back. "She could have killed us. She could kill us all," Timur added, his courage evaporating like morning mist. The gymnasium had become a pressure cooker. 150 students stood rooted to the spot, digesting the staggering news. The quiet girl they had ignored for 3 years was actually one of the most dangerous fighters in the region's underground arena. Rostislav's jaw moved silently. His entire world, built on the certainty that he was the top predator in this ecosystem, was crumbling before his eyes. The script had changed so much he no longer knew his lines. "This is impossible," he finally managed to stammer. "The ghost fights adult men, professionals, killers, and wins," someone added. "Stop!" The voice from the crowd was quiet, scared, but resolute. A freshman girl Vasilisa knew by sight, but had never spoken to, stepped forward. Aglaya Markova, small, quiet, one of those who tried to be invisible to survive high school. Just stop, Aglaya repeated, tears in her eyes, looking at Rostislav. Please, don't you see what you're doing? What you've been doing all this time? Get out of the way, Rostislav snarled. This is none of your business. It is my business. The dam broke. You made my brother drop out of school. He loved history, but you and your friends bullied him every day because he wasn't cool enough, because he was different, because you could... Other students joined her voice, finding courage in unity and in the presence of the one who had just proven that Rostislav Orlov was not invincible. You sent Yakov Morozov to the hospital. You destroyed Vera's art project because she wouldn't date you. You've been terrorizing this gymnasium for 4 years. Rostislav's head darted from side to side, trying to remember faces to take revenge later. But there were too many. The spell was breaking. Shut up! He roared. Everyone shut up! I'm in charge here. You're in charge of nothing. Vasilisa's voice cut through his hysteria like a sharp blade. She stepped forward, and although he was still taller and larger somehow, she seemed bigger. You're just a scared boy who hurts others because someone once hurt you, because your father told you that's what strength is, because you're terrified that if you stop pushing others down, you'll realize how insignificant you truly are. Every word landed like a physical blow. Rostislav's face shifted from anger to humiliation, and then to something resembling pain. You don't know anything about me, he whispered. I know everything about you, Vasilisa countered. I've fought 50 versions of you, different faces but the same brokenness, the same need to break beautiful things because something beautiful was broken inside you. A dead silence fell over the gym. Suddenly, the strict voice of the principal boomed over the school radio. Rostislav Orlov, Denis Volkov, Zakhar Mishin, and Timur Aliyev. Report to the principal's office immediately. 4 security guards entered the gym, actual police officers, not just regular school custodians. Vasilisa noticed their badges. What's going on? Timur whined. One of the officers held a tablet with clear footage from surveillance cameras, ironically installed to prevent vandalism, at Rostislav's father's initiative. Assault, threats, conspiracy by a group of individuals, the officer listed. And that's just for today. In the last hour, we've received 23 more reports from students about incidents that have been happening for years. You can't arrest me, Rostislav shouted, backing away. My father is a deputy. Your father is currently in an emergency city council meeting discussing his immediate resignation, the officer interrupted him. Turns out covering up your son's antics isn't very popular policy. And yes, he's the one who told us where to find you. Said he was tired of cleaning up your messes. These words hit Rostislav harder than any punch. He looked around desperately for support, but met only cold stares and raised phones. This is all your fault. He turned to Vasilisa, tears streaming down his face. You ruined everything. You ruined my life. No, Vasilisa replied softly. You ruined your own life. I just stopped letting you ruin others' lives. As the officers led him to the exit, he stopped at the door, turned, and for a moment, the mask fell completely. Beneath it was just a broken child who had learned all the wrong lessons about power. I'm sorry, he whispered, then louder, to the entire gym. I'm sorry, and he left. The gym didn't erupt in applause, but let out something like a collective exhale. 3 years of held breaths finally released. Vasilisa headed for the exit. She still needed to get to the fight. Vikenty would be furious. Ghost! A voice stopped her, not because someone called her by her fighter name, but because she recognized the voice. Vikenty Kniazev stood in the gym doorway, accompanied by 2 huge bodyguards. Expensive suit, gold watch, a man who had built his fortune on the blood and pain of others. Where are you going? He asked softly. We have a tournament coming up, don't we? Students recoiled. Even after Rostislav left, they recognized a predator of a different caliber. How did you find me? Vasilisa asked, though she already knew the answer. The videos were everywhere. Please, he sneered like a shark. I've known who you were for months. Did you really think a hood and mask would fool anyone serious? He pulled out a contract. I respected your privacy. You brought me money, big money. And today you'll bring me even more. The grand prize. Winner takes all. You already signed, remember? Break the contract and I'll take everything. Your apartment, your mother's car, your brother's medical debts, everything. Vasilisa felt the trap snap shut. My brother needs that money. Then fight for him like the animal you pretend not to be. She's not an animal. Elena Olegovna, the school psychologist, pushed through the crowd. She was scared but determined. She's 18 years old and what you're doing is illegal, Knyazev laughed. Illegal? I'm a legal sports promoter. She signed a contract. Of course, there are penalties for breaching it. As is slander, exploitation, organized crime, Elena Olegovna smiled firmly. Do you know that federal agencies have been building a case against you for 3 years? They just needed someone on the inside, someone to document your operations. Knyazev narrowed his eyes. You're lying? Vasilisa pulled a tiny voice recorder from her pocket. Every fight, every conversation, every threat, she said quietly. 3 months of evidence. They contacted me after my 35th fight. They said they would protect my brother and pay for his treatment if I helped them gather everything needed to finish you once and for all. Knyazev's bodyguards reached for their weapons, but dozens of phones live streaming were pointed directly at them. You think you're smart? Knyazev hissed. You think the special services care about some girl? I have judges, politicians? Had. Elena Olegovna corrected him. Your patrons have been arrested all day. Your network has collapsed, Vikinti. This is the end. Sirens wailed outside. Knyazev looked at Vasilisa with pure hatred. You ruined everything, all for a sick boy who's going to die anyway. Vasilisa moved before anyone could stop her. Not with the brutality of the ghost, but with the controlled fury of a sister. One palm strike, precisely to the solar plexus. Knyazev crumpled to his knees, gasping for air. His name is Dima, she said, standing over him. And he's going to live, because people like you won't own people like me anymore. SWAT officers burst into the gym, professionally and quickly handcuffing Knyazev, who was still trying to catch his breath. 6 months later, Vasilisa stood in the transformed gymnasium. 60 students in neat rows practiced basic self-defense stances in her self-defense club. Among them was Aglaya, who no longer tried to be invisible, and even Zakhar, Rostislav's former friend. Remember, she called out, strength isn't for hurting, but for protecting what matters. Her phone vibrated, a message from Dima. Treatment is working. Doctors say I'm getting better. In the corner, Elena Olegovna handed her a letter. Bauman Moscow State Technical University is offering you a full scholarship. They were impressed by your essay on applying martial arts principles to engineering problems. A future she hadn't dared to dream of was opening before her. One day, in a hospital corridor, she ran into Rostislav. He had matured. There was no longer arrogance in his gaze. He told her he had gone through rehabilitation, earned his diploma, and was now working in construction. He handed her an envelope. I've been saving. This is for your brother's fund. I know the state covered everything, but please let me do at least something good. She accepted the envelope, noticing the calluses on his hands. Real, honest work. They stood in silence, former enemies who had found something akin to understanding. The ghost had died having completed her task, but Vasilisa Petrova was more alive than ever, and she had work ahead of her. She looked out the window at her laughing brother and realized that her true calling was not to be a champion who won with her fists, but to be a teacher who won with her heart. The most important battles are won not in the ring, but in the ability to show people a better way to be strong.